My name is Claire Rowe. I'm 35, a family court judge, the kind who rarely gets rattled. But that morning, as I opened the next case file on my docket, my fingers hesitated. 2 names, common enough. Nothing that should have made me pause, but the photo paper clipped inside. It jolted something. A woman, elegant and alert, the kind of confidence that doesn't flinch easily. A man beside her, hand resting just a little too perfectly on her hip. I stared at the image longer than I meant to. Then I blinked, closed the file. It was probably nothing. Case 48B, the clerk called out. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Judge Rowe presiding. I straightened my robe, sat upright, neutral, steady. The doors opened. She walked in first. Graceful, expensive perfume, high-end shoes, the kind of presence that knows how to perform. She glanced at the bench and paused, just slightly, but her face didn't change. Then he followed. His gait was slower, less controlled. His eyes didn't scan the room. He didn't look at me, but I looked at him, and I remembered too much. They sat apart at the table. A lawyer stood between them. He whispered something. She didn't respond. I opened the hearing with standard language. This court is now in session regarding the petition for divorce between the parties named. I didn't stumble. I didn't flinch. But something about the way she crossed her legs, or the way he kept his hands in fists under the table, made the room feel tight. Like the truth had arrived 20 minutes early and was standing in the corner, watching us all pretend. The session was procedural, no outbursts, no drama. But when the woman leaned forward to sign a preliminary document, her sleeve slipped, a small scar near her wrist, barely visible. I remembered how she got that scar. She caught me looking. For the briefest second, her mask slipped, a flicker of something, recognition, doubt, worry. Then she looked away. The man never glanced at me, but I didn't need him to. I could already see what kind of life they'd built, polished on the outside, brittle underneath. I'd seen enough of those marriages to know how they ended, and this one was already a pile of dry leaves waiting for a spark. I adjourned the hearing. They rose. She grabbed her coat. He adjusted his watch, and just before she walked out, she looked back, right at me. It wasn't surprise, it wasn't fear. It was a question she didn't dare ask out loud. And I didn't answer. Not yet. You can live an entire decade without saying someone's name out loud. You file it away like an old photo you never burn, but never look at either. It stays somewhere deep, wrapped in the linen of unspoken things. That was Anna. She was 2 years younger than me, but everyone always assumed she was older, more vibrant, more confident. Our mother said she had a face for bright rooms. I wasn't sure what kind of face I had. I only knew mine didn't open doors the way hers did. We were close once. Or at least I thought we were. Until Daniel. He wasn't remarkable, not in any way that would have stood out to someone like Anna. But I met him during my first year of law school, and he made me feel less like a cautionary tale and more like a woman who could be chosen, wanted, safe. He was steady, kind in quiet ways. He listened. That was enough for me then. The first betrayal was subtle. Anna visited me one weekend. She brought homemade sangria and charm, spinning stories about her marketing internship and the strange men in elevators who flirted with her while holding iced lattes. She was magnetic, always had been. Daniel laughed too hard at her jokes that night, but I didn't register it until later. A week after she left, she called me. "You should watch him closer," she said, half joking. "He's handsome in that wounded professor kind of way." I didn't think much of it. But the next month, Daniel grew distant. His texts became sparse. Our usual coffee rituals turned into reschedules. One night, he said he needed space, that law school had changed me, that I didn't smile as much anymore. I asked him if it was Anna. He didn't answer, just said, "Don't make this about something it's not." He left. Anna didn't return my calls after that. When I tried to confront her, she accused me of being jealous, paranoid. "You always ruin good things by overthinking them," she said. "No wonder he left." I didn't hear from either of them again, not when I graduated, not when I passed the bar, not when I lost our mother. They didn't come to the funeral, didn't send flowers, didn't even text. It took everything I had to seal that part of myself off, to build a life that didn't depend on apologies that were never coming. I worked through weekends, took clerkships others passed on, took every lonely shift that nobody wanted. By 30, I had my first appointment to family court. By 33, I'd earned my robe. And in all that time, I never spoke her name. Not once. So when I saw Anna again, older, sharper, but still performing like every room was a camera test, I felt nothing. Not rage, not sorrow, just the cold clarity of someone who'd already buried what they couldn't save. The man beside her was older now, too, fuller in the face, less sure in the shoulders. But I knew the way he avoided eye contact. I knew his tells. I used to love him for them. Now I watched him through the same lens I used on every other litigant in my courtroom, assessing patterns, gauging risk, weighing truths they didn't think they'd spoken. I didn't need their file to know how this case would go, because the foundation had already cracked, and I had lived inside that collapse before. Court was in session. The bailiff called the room to order. The couple sat at opposite tables, counsel on each side, notes stacked neatly, tension thick enough to measure in pounds. I didn't look at them as individuals. Not yet. I looked at posture, breath, control. Daniel slouched. Anna sat stiff and angled slightly toward the gallery, as if the audience would redeem her. Her lawyer whispered something to her. She didn't respond, just flipped her hair back and crossed her arms. I scanned the preliminary summary. The case was standard on paper: contested divorce, single child, no prenup, one primary asset, a co-owned business Daniel had funded and Anna had managed, allegations of infidelity, financial misappropriation, mutual blame. I'd seen this file 100 times before, but never this close to the scar. "Let's proceed," I said. Opening statements began. Daniel's attorney spoke first, measured, clinical, painting Daniel as a wronged husband whose contributions had been devalued and whose character had been smeared in a desperate bid to win custody and control. Anna rolled her eyes. Her turn came next. Her lawyer leaned into the romantic language, invoking the sacrifices she'd made, the years she'd invested, the loneliness of living in Daniel's emotional shadow. I listened. I nodded. And I said nothing, because I didn't need their words to understand what this was. I had lived this story once. It just wore different clothes now. After the statements, I recessed for 10 minutes. In my chambers, I stared at the file again. Same faces, different titles. Everything dressed in legalese and affidavits, but the rot beneath hadn't changed. When I returned, Daniel was standing near the water cooler, alone. He glanced at me, then away. There was recognition in his eyes, but not certainty. He hadn't placed me yet, or maybe he had but didn't want to believe it. Anna stayed seated, scrolling through her phone. That was always her tell. In moments of pressure, she resorted to performance. We resumed. Testimonies followed. Financial disclosures, business valuations, messages admitted into evidence. The usual paper trail of dissolution. It didn't take long before the cracks showed. Anna denied transferring funds from the joint account, but the timestamp was clear. Her signature, blurry but legible. Daniel said he'd paid the initial capital for their business, but he couldn't produce the full contract. When pressed, Anna offered vague recollections of verbal promises. They both started unraveling in small ways. He grew more defensive, she grew more desperate. And the more they spoke, the more invisible I became. Not the judge, Claire. To them, I was just the person in the robe. They didn't see the girl who once cried on the stairs outside Anna's dorm, clutching her phone, wondering if she was crazy for believing her sister could never do that to her. They didn't see the woman who once stood in a thrift store changing room, holding her mother's funeral dress, texting a man who never replied. Number. They didn't see any of that, but I remembered. Every missed call, every lie I swallowed to keep peace, every time I was told I was too sensitive, too rigid, too cold. I wasn't cold, I was careful, and now I was calm, because while they were unraveling in real time, I was already composing the ruling in my mind, not out of spite, out of precision. They had walked into my courtroom expecting a process. What they would get was the weight of truth, with documentation. The legal process is designed to create order. You call witnesses, submit exhibits, cross-examine. You keep your emotions in the hallway and your voice measured in court. You follow the steps. But some truths aren't written in testimony. They surface in hesitation. In the moment, someone stumbles on their own narrative and forgets what version they're supposed to perform. That happened by noon. Anna's lawyer had submitted screenshots, photos she'd allegedly found on Daniel's phone, suggestive messages, hotel reservations, familiar names. The implication was clear. Daniel had been cheating. Daniel denied it. I didn't flinch. I didn't look at either of them longer than necessary. But inside, I was noting the timeline, the hotel name, the booking date. Because I recognized the hotel. It was the same one Daniel took Anna to, back when he and I were still together. I remember the receipt. It had arrived in a shared mailbox by mistake. It hadn't been a one-night mistake. It had been a pattern. I didn't bring that up. I didn't need to. The past was present enough in how they turned on each other now, each trying to weaponize the other's betrayal as if it would cleanse their own, but justice doesn't work like that. They both came dirty. And now they were crumbling in front of me. Daniel lost his composure when Anna accused him of using their business funds to book those trips. His lawyer objected. I overruled. Anna was instructed to clarify. She did. With a smile, a slow, deliberate one I'd seen before. That was the moment Daniel looked up at me, really looked, and froze. I didn't change expression. I didn't blink. I let silence stretch 5 seconds longer than comfortable. Then I asked the next question. Mrs. Grayson, can you confirm the dates of these transfers? She did, with unnecessary enthusiasm. Her lawyer tried to rein her in, but Anna never understood moderation. I allowed it, because sometimes when people believe they're winning, they talk too much. She described how Daniel lied to her, how he had always been selfish, how she'd sacrificed everything, and how even now he refused to apologize. I waited. When she was done, I asked, did you believe the business funds were shared property at the time of these purchases? There was a flicker in her eyes, not panic, but calculation. She hesitated, then said yes. Noted, I replied. That's when her lawyer realized what just happened, but it was too late. In one sentence, she'd admitted to knowing about the misappropriations and, by extension, her participation in covering them. The courtroom didn't gasp. This wasn't a movie, but the shift was palpable. Daniel's attorney caught it. He leaned in, whispered something. Daniel didn't respond, because now the weight was shifting, and I wasn't doing anything but asking questions. That's what unnerved them most. No visible bias, no anger, no raised voice, just structure and pressure. I recessed for lunch. In chambers, I stared at my reflection for a moment, removed the robe, sat on the edge of the desk. I didn't feel powerful. I felt precise. And precision, after years of being called emotional, was its own kind of power. I reviewed the financial summaries again. The inconsistencies were there. Transfer logs, irregular salaries, cash withdrawals marked as consulting fees to an LLC that didn't exist. The kind of mistakes you make when you think no one's watching. But I was watching now, because I wasn't just the ex. I was the law, and when I returned to the bench, I let that truth sit quietly beneath every word I spoke. Some hearings end with fury, some with exhaustion, but the worst ones end with a silence that makes everyone in the room afraid to move. That's what I delivered at 3:42 p.m. A silence, not from indecision, but finality. We reconvened after lunch. I returned to the bench, robe buttoned, face unreadable. Neither Anna nor Daniel could look directly at me for long. The attorneys made closing remarks. Daniel's lawyer emphasized the financial irregularities, how Anna had approved expenses, then attempted to use them as ammunition once the marriage soured. She argued that Anna's emotional volatility made the partnership impossible and that her retaliatory spending was deliberate. Anna's lawyer tried to focus on emotional damages, public embarrassment, isolation. The narrative shifted toward how Anna was manipulated by a charismatic man who isolated her from her family and sabotaged her confidence. That part almost made me laugh. Almost. They had no idea how ironic that was. I asked one final round of questions, short, surgical. To Daniel, was the property on West Hill Avenue acquired during the marriage or before? He answered before his lawyer could interrupt. Before. I bought it in 2018. She moved in after the wedding. To Anna, were the expenses listed under Grayson Interior's account reviewed jointly? Yes, but I didn't think. Did you sign off? A pause. Yes. I made notes, then set my pen down. My voice was calm, even. This court has reviewed all submitted financials, testimony, and statements. I didn't look at either of them. I looked at the facts. The property at West Hill will remain under sole ownership of Daniel Grayson, as it was acquired pre-marriage and never transferred. Anna shifted in her seat. As for the business assets, the court finds that while both parties contributed, only one party can demonstrate consistent legal responsibility. The court will be ordering a partial liquidation and equitable distribution, excluding personal withdrawals made under unregistered LLCs. I said it plainly, but Anna heard the message behind the wording. She would not be walking away with the business she tried to claim. She blinked, then opened her mouth, only to be silenced by her own lawyer's hand on her arm. I continued. Regarding personal damages, the court finds no grounds for punitive restitution. Any emotional grievances between the parties do not meet the threshold for damages under state law. That was the end of it. No cash out, no public pity, just loss, muted, quiet, clean, like most real consequences. Daniel looked relieved, not victorious, just lighter. He had that expression some men wear when the consequences finally hit the person who once hit back harder. But he didn't look at me. Not once. Anna did. She stared at me after I dismissed the room. Not with rage, not with regret, with disbelief. As if, for the first time in her life, the world had truly told her no. I stood, removed my robe, gathered my files. walked past them both without pause. And just as I reached the door, I heard her voice, small, but aimed to sting. "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" I turned my head slightly, met her eyes for the first time that day, and said, "No. This is what you earned." Then I walked out. I didn't look back, because by then I knew something Anna hadn't realized yet. Revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's just gravity, and eventually everything falls. After court adjourned, I didn't return to chambers. I signed out with the clerk, kept my coat draped over my arm, and walked the 7 blocks to the parking structure in silence. I didn't want the driver. I didn't want company. I wanted the sound of my own steps. That's the part no one tells you about poetic justice. It's quiet. No one claps. No one cries out. The world doesn't tilt in acknowledgement, it just moves on, but slower, heavier. You carry it, every part of it. The first breath outside the courthouse hit different. There was wind in my coat sleeves, but I didn't feel cold, just awake. At the top level of the garage, I sat in my car with the door open, staring at the city skyline. The same skyline I used to look at through the cracked blinds of our childhood bedroom. The same skyline Anna once promised we'd own together. She'd been 13 when she said that. I was 16 and tired even then. I thought about going back to work. I thought about writing the final summary into the system before midnight. I thought about nothing. Then I drove. Not home, not anywhere intentional, just forward. Eventually, I passed the intersection where Daniel used to wait for me outside my old office. He'd lean against his car, coffee in hand, playing music through the stereo like a scene from a show. For a few months, I thought that was love. I turned left. 15 minutes later, I found myself outside our parents' old house. Anna still lived there, or near there. I wasn't sure anymore. The gate was open, the lights were on. A car I didn't recognize sat in the driveway, too new, too polished for a house with ivy-cracked siding. I didn't get out. I didn't need to. I knew who was inside. I could picture the posture, the wine glasses, the shallow laughter trying to erase court transcripts. I could also picture the unopened mail on the hallway table, the ones marked "Final Notice," the ones Anna used to toss before anyone saw them. A long time ago, I would have felt something. Now? I felt the weight of the stamp in my handbag. It was from the registrar's office, my official transfer confirmation, a new appointment, pending relocation, a different district, 1 county over, clean slate. I would never see them again. Not in court, not in passing, not in holidays I no longer had to decline. There's no ceremonial ending when you outgrow your family, no certificate, no legal form, just a moment where you realize you don't need to answer the door anymore, not when they come calling, not when they need forgiveness, not when they finally believe you matter. By the time I got home, it was nearly 10. I poured a glass of water, stood barefoot in the kitchen, still in my court dress, the kind with shoulder seams too sharp to forget you're wearing it. I left my phone off. No voicemails, no gloating texts, no false grace, because I didn't need it. I'd already watched the floor give way, and I wasn't standing in it. 3 days passed before Anna broke silence. It started with a voicemail I didn't listen to. The transcript preview said, "Claire, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Please call me." I deleted it. The second came 2 hours later. A text with nothing but a photo. A cracked mirror in a dressing room. Her face swollen. Mascara under both eyes. Caption, "You've made your point. Can we talk now?" There was no reply from me, but that didn't stop her. 2 more messages the next day, then an email, then one from our mother. I hadn't heard from either of them in nearly a year. Not since I stopped answering calls after Anna's wedding. Suddenly, they remembered I existed. Anna's tone shifted fast. By day 4, she wasn't apologizing. She was accusing. "You set me up. You could have recused yourself. That was personal, and you know it." "I hope the robe makes you feel powerful. You were always desperate for that." "Congratulations, Claire. You finally got to watch me fall apart." That one I didn't delete. I archived it. For reasons I can't explain. Not for revenge, just to remember. The thing about people like Anna is, they don't believe consequences apply to them. Not really. She thought a few tears and the right timing could stitch things back. She thought she could reframe the whole narrative. We both made mistakes. We didn't. I stayed silent when she dated Daniel behind my back. I stayed silent when my parents excused it as bad timing. I stayed silent when she invited me to the wedding like a charity case. They called me dramatic, overreactive, cold. But now that I held the gavel, now they knew the difference between silence and distance. A week later, a letter arrived at the courthouse, handwritten, thick envelope, no return address, but I recognized the script, our mother's. I didn't open it at my desk. I took it home, waited until the hall was dark and the kettle clicked off before slicing it open. Inside was a single page, a soft, creased sheet of linen paper with 4 lines. "Claire, what you did was cruel. Family is not something to weaponize. Your father would be ashamed. Anna still loves you. No signature, no apology, no ownership." I folded it neatly, returned it to the envelope, and dropped it in the trash with my gloves. Then I poured a glass of wine, sat at my dining table, and started my transfer letter to the new district. Some people think revenge is loud, that it's fire, broken glass, and slammed doors. But it isn't. Revenge is patience. It's distance. It's watching someone write 5 versions of reality to avoid the one where they hurt you. It's knowing that when the truth finally hits, it will echo through the spaces they created. I didn't ruin Anna's marriage. I didn't steal Daniel. I didn't erase the trust between them. They did that. I just happened to be holding the mirror when they looked up. And that was never my fault. I didn't reply to Anna's letter. No call, no message, nothing. There was nothing to say, not after everything. No apology could make it coherent. No confession would change what had already played out. In court, under oath, on the record. Instead, I submitted my transfer request. Judicial rotation was routine. No one asked why. 3 weeks later, I was assigned to a quieter district, new city, new docket. No one knew my name. I liked that, but I had one final piece of unfinished business. My full name had always been Claire Anna Rowe. Yes, Anna, the same as my sister's. We shared it. Except she never really shared anything. She took it, owned it, polished it, left the rest of us in shadow. I can't count how many times growing up I heard, "Oh, you're Anna's sister?" The follow-up was always worse, "But you're the older one?" Even when I passed the bar, our mother joked, "Anna says you finally beat her in something." That week, I filed to legally drop my middle name. Cost me $83 and took 12 minutes. The best erasure of my life. I didn't track the outcome of their divorce. I could have checked the filings, watched their assets unravel, but I didn't care. The moment I signed that decree, I was done. The point had never been to destroy them. It was to reclaim myself. They'd spent years calling me bitter, invisible, replaceable. And yet, in the end, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream or punish or throw stones. I simply signed their ending and walked away without ever needing to look back. 2 months after I transferred districts, an envelope arrived. No name, just my office address and my own, handwritten. I didn't open it right away. When I finally did, it contained a small note and a USB drive. "Claire, I know I don't deserve your help, but he's suing me now, for defamation. I'm lost. I thought you might understand how to fight back. Just legal advice, nothing else. I'm sorry for what I said that night. You were always stronger. I was just too proud to admit it. Anna. There was no apology for stealing my life, my trust, my peace. Only panic. Now that the man she chose over family had turned on her. I plugged in the USB screenshots, messages, shaky video, photos of bruises. I believed her. But I didn't pity her. She'd been part of the damage once. She helped bury me. Now she wanted help digging herself out? I ejected the drive, dropped it in the shred bin. Then, on the back of her card, I wrote one sentence. You had a voice when it mattered. You chose silence. I didn't sign it. I mailed it to her office. No return address, no further contact. Because silence, when deliberate, can be a verdict too. I never replied to Anna again. Her message sat in the past, like everything else she'd ruined. Eventually, I heard pieces. She lost the custody battle, moved states, changed her name on social media. She became quieter, smaller, maybe even honest, but I didn't follow her story. I had my own. In my new district, the cases kept coming, people unraveling, hoping the law could sort out what the heart shattered. I did my job. Clean, sharp, fair. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses, sisters suing each other, spouses shouting across courtrooms, and feel that old heat rise. But I never let it through. I'd learned silence isn't weakness, it's power. It's what I used when they mocked me. It's what I chose when they begged. It's what I kept when they lost. One evening, I left the courthouse late, lights dim, halls empty. I stood in the elevator alone and looked at my reflection. Older, steadier, not angry, not broken, just intact. They wanted to leave me behind. Instead, they became footnotes in a story I finished, and I never had to raise my voice to win.